Welcome to the meeting room at Global TV Talk Show, a broadcast service of globalbusinessnews.net.
This episode from the meeting room of Global TV Talk Show is brought to you by
The Bridge School, the accredited international online private school of choice, at bridgek12.org.
Porch Light Rental and Destination Services. Reduce your renter lump sum or managed relocation costs. Visit them at porchlightrental.com.
And by airs.com. With our full range of services, we can help design and manage your international relocation. Find us at airs.com.
Primestone Partners, featuring corporate, government, and developer housing solutions, as well as senior-level advisory services. Find them at primestonepartners.com.
And by International Auto Source. We are the vehicle experts for expats, featuring all major brands of automobiles with flexible solutions and financing. On the web at intlauto.com.
Become a global player in your field.
CrossCultural to Go provides virtual support for your global business and career success.
We can help you thrive in 140 plus countries and markets.
On the web at crossculturetogo.com.
This is Ed Cohen, your broadcast host on Global TV Talk Show, a business unit of globalbusinessnews.net, which has been around since '03. Google Analytics, if we can believe all that, they say that we've had 1.2 million audience page views on our site since '03. But more relevant, since we began this Global TV Talk Show series in April of 2020, after the demise of my live conference business due to pandemic, we've done about 150 broadcasts, and Ali Shami has been on many. Thank you. And Google Analytics says we've had about 110,000 audience page views. Ali, they're all coming to hear you. So welcome, Ali Shami and George Monagan. I'm in Southern California. Ali is in Seattle. George, where are you located?
I'm also in Seattle.
Great, great. Is it still hot up there, or did it start raining?
No, it's 61 degrees this morning.
Oh, boy, that's good. I'm here in Palm Desert.
Woo.
And the temperature at 6 a.m. was 88, and currently it's at 101. It's going to about 112 today.
Wow.
We were here about a month ago, and it hit 121. How about that?
Wow.
So, but it's cool in here. It's about 75, and got the fan. You can't see it up here. It's blowing around.
Well, Ed, in your area, you guys have ACs. We in Seattle and George, you agree? We rarely, I mean, very, very few houses have ACs. So when the heat wave comes, a lot of people gravitate towards the stores, restaurants, and every year I go through, I'm like, when this is over, I'm gonna buy one. And then now I just forget about it.
Just go buy a fan. Just get a fan,
Oh, yeah. I got fans, yes.
In fact, this is for a live audience here, folks, but Home Depot had for like $8 this air purifier. You plug it in, and it's like icicles, and it doesn't do a big room, but it does a small room, and it just filters air through a cooling system. You don't need air conditioning. How about that? Somebody reinvented that.
Wow.
So we're here to talk about, what are we here to talk about? We're here to talk about cultural understanding and training from a business context at a senior level. So I want to go first to Ali Shami, who I've known for many years. And as I said, he's been on our show in a variety of contexts. Ali, how is your global FTD business? Now, you're not in the flower business, are you?
No, we don't deliver flowers. Even though I thought about that, I thought about just when I go have a presentation.
Well, you ought to put flowers on your desk right over there.
Exactly,
right.
Exactly. No, I'm just thinking when things open up, and hopefully in the next conference you have, you just go, I'll just have one on the side and say, hey, on your way out, please pick one of the flowers.
Yeah, pick the flowers.
No,
in fact, if I were you, I'd make it a cactus.
So a lot of people will be like, oh, FTD flowers. They're like, no, it stands for Feel, think, do.
Oh,
And
good.
everything that we do when we first, from the minute we open our eyes, we go through these three things, not necessarily in that order, but it always bounce through these things. We think about something, we feel it relates to something that happened in the past, we do something, and when we do something, we think about what we just did and what we felt. So it's going pretty good. Thanks for asking, Ed.
You bet. So I want to reach out and shake your hand, guys, and so we can make believe we're networking. So special guest today is George Monagan, who Ali have known for a long time, and this is our first encounter. George Monagan is an expert in cross-cultural adaptation, and we're talking about feel, think, and do from that point of view too, right?
Yes.
So cross-cultural means a lot of things. Now, today, in today's vernacular, it also means company culture and employee proposition, value proposition. But in the traditional way, it has to do with hierarchy of needs. Why don't you just review for our global audience what exactly that means in today's context?
Sure. Well, number one, let me agree with you 100% that every company has its own culture, whether that's understood consciously or unconsciously, and the more conscious, the better. But to go to the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, in the course of my work doing cross-cultural training in the public sector and private sector, and Ali and I worked together at Boeing doing cross-cultural training, one of the things that I discovered was that I had as a professional, had a need to have models that I could use to explain to people the process of cross-cultural experience, So Maslow's hierarchy of needs is instructive because when you think of your any person's current experience in their hometown, let's say in Seattle, I live in Seattle, and I have a whole life in Seattle. I have all my, my physiological needs and my safety needs and my relationship needs and my ego needs are all taken care of. I've built that life. If I were to move to even to another city, not to mention another country, I would have to go through a process of rebuilding those levels of my needs, of addressing my needs. And the effort required to do that has an impact on your mental state, in effect. So when you are in the process of a move, if you go to another country, let's say in my experience, working in West Africa and South Asia, when you arrive in that place, you are expending a tremendous amount of energy trying to take care of those physiological needs and safety and security needs, and you have less energy available to you to address your relationship needs and your ego needs. And so therefore, what you want to learn about, and you want to be a fully functioning person in that culture, is actually being interrupted by this other need, more basic needs. And that has an impact on your mental state, your emotional state, and also your ability to learn efficiently. So when I worked with, for example, Peace Corps volunteers, I would explain that process to them and say, this is what you're going through. This is what you need to understand about yourself. You want to learn about this culture. You want to learn to be a productive person here. But first, you're going to have to take care of these other needs before you're going to get to that spot. So the frustration that you feel that you're not addressing these higher needs is understandable and expected. When I would work with trainers who were going to deliver training, I would say, let's take a moment to understand, why do these people act the way they do when they get here? Why do they complain so much? Why do they seem so needy? Why do they seem to be in a bad mood a lot of the times? Why do they not take direction well? Well, that's not surprising because they're going through this process. Now, historically, typically we would call that culture shock. And, everyone has heard the term culture shock. And depending on how much you've read about culture shock, you would probably see a lot of connection between that theory and this, the impact of this Maslow's hierarchy. But I wanted to use Maslow's because to me, it was just a generic model that I could use to explain the experience to the participants or the people going through it, and also to those who are trying to assist them as they go through that period. So, for example, if you're in a 3-month training program as a new Peace Corps volunteer, you're hoping that by the end of that 3 months, you will be making progress up the levels of Maslow's hierarchy. Now, when I worked with corporate clients here in Seattle, where I would work usually with families, and one of the husband or wife had been transferred to the Seattle from another country. I had some clients recently who were from France, had been transferred to Seattle to work for Boeing. They worked for a French aerospace partner of Boeing. And so I talked about this same process for them, because when they got here, one person had a job, they had a place to go every day, they had a purpose in their life that was kind of pulling them through. The other spouse didn't have a job, and they were basically saddled with most of the responsibility to rebuild those bottom levels of the pyramid, the physiological needs, the safety and security needs, finding the house, finding where to buy groceries, find if kids are going to go to school, where are they going to go to school? So the two spouses are having two totally different experiences, because the one who has the job has a connection and something that's scheduling them and is familiar to them, is kind of pulling them through the process. The other person does not. And so they are kind of getting the short end of the deal while they're supporting the whole family and working your way slowly up the pyramid. They might have some conflict with their spouse who has this other outlet that's giving them, kind of nourishing them in a different way. But if I could explain that to, and I worked with several couples, I explained that to them, and I could see that they were understanding. And in one instance, a couple where there was the husband who had the job and the wife who was staying at home, the wife started to cry because she said, now I understand some of what I'm feeling and the frustration and, the negative emotions that I've been feeling, and I can explain it to myself and I can explain it to my husband. Whereas before it was just, I was kind of suffering individually.
So, not to get this off the rails at all, but would you pass out little teddy bears, warm and fuzzy things, or the equivalent, so that lollipops or something to just calm everybody down a little bit?
The fuzzy bear is really is when someone consciously understands the experience that they're having. They can label it, they can identify it, they can explain it to themselves, and they can explain it to the people around them. Whereas before they felt isolated and in a negative emotional state, and then resentment comes into play sometimes, and it can become very, create a lot of disturbance in a relationship. Now, I'm not a marriage counselor, but it's a way of helping people understand their experience. And when they have that understanding, they have the vocabulary to express their emotions and their experience, and they can also plan in a conscious way to move up the levels of needs of Maslow's hierarchy. They can define what they need to do. If someone is saying, I'm so frustrated because I can't find a certain service or product that I need, and it's holding me back from doing other things, I need to take care of that now. That needs to be my primary activity. I need to find a grocery store that sells A, B, and C. I need to find a drugstore that sells A, B, and C. I need to find a service to take care of this or that. And I'm not going to do anything else until I take care of that. I'm going to put it behind me, or I'm going to put it in my pocket, and now I can move forward.
So I wanted to ask Ali to jump in and just add to this context, and then we'll get right back to you, George. Ali, is this relevant to people being relocated out of U.S. into foreign places as much as it is inbound?
Absolutely. I love what George just described, and I love the example. And this is just one example. But the applications are everywhere. It's from somebody going to another country within the organization. As George was going over the importance of leaders recognizing the needs, the safety, the things that keeps them, that pulls up, that gravity that pulls them down on the Maslow pyramid. If any leader of any organization, that's the first thing that they come to their mind is that's what's going to keep my people from being their best, from operating at the higher levels. And this reminds me of a book that I'm working on now that relates productivity to what I call humantivity. A lot of people, they think, you know what, it's just like the product. I'm here to do a job. I need to produce this product at this time, at this time, with that much cost, with the right quality, and I'm just gonna jump into something else. And recognizing that you really want to get the best out of the business and make people feel so good and to give their best, is you really need to pay attention to that. So to answer your question, it's so and it's not just the culture shock of somebody going to go work, live somewhere for 4 years or for 2 years or whatever. I see the culture shock could be for just a visit. How powerful is it when I send a team overseas to go for the week, for like 3 days work, for 3 days in Rome. And if I tell them, you're meeting on Monday at 8:00, and I'm going to save a couple of nights at the hotel in Rome. So I tell you what, let's pick the travel for them to land on Sunday night at 11 p.m. This gives them such a few time. I mean, can you imagine? They come into the meeting and they're not themselves. They're still dealing with, and this is if they don't lose their luggage, God forbid, which happened to me one time. I'm heading to Rome and from Rome to Milan. So to answer your question, absolutely. And to sum things up, it's really something that was beautifully said by a German philosopher. He said, do not expect me to fulfill your vision until you fill my stomach. Do we think about, and it could be like, selfish thing, right? But it's so true. It's so natural. How can I be 100% myself when I have this gravity of worry pulling me down? So that's beautifully described.
George, do you recommend that companies do some homework first before creating this mess?
Well, absolutely. I've done some work with a company that contracts with large companies to do cultural adaptation training after people have arrived here in the United States. And I give them a 1-day training. Now, I can give them some information in 1 day, but that's not gonna, that's not nearly enough. The question is, how much preparation do they get before they leave their home countries? How much on the ground support do they get once they arrive in the new country? So for example, does a company have a support office for international employees who are moving in? Do they get help with those bottom 2 levels of Maslow's needs? Because what do you get off the plane? Usually what happens is someone arrives, they get a certain amount of time in a hotel. Let's say they get 30 days in a hotel, and then within 30 days, you're supposed to find your house or apartment to rent, and you're supposed to be able to get yourself back and forth to work and take care of all of your daily needs and be at work 40 hours a week, being as productive as 100% productive. But if you were to move to Seattle, for example, and you were staying, I worked with a young woman from India who was working for a software company whose headquarters were in downtown Seattle. And she was looking for an apartment because she wanted to be able to walk to work. Well, you can imagine the cost you have to pay for an apartment in downtown Seattle. She had 30 days to find an apartment, and it totally preoccupied her mind because on the 31st day, she was either going to have to start paying for her own hotel, or she had to be in an apartment. And the company did not provide any nuts and bolts support for her to do that. It's a young company. It's not exactly a startup, but their attitude was, well, we pay you, we're giving you 30 days in a hotel. We pay you lots of money to do your job. So you go do, figure it out. And you get 1 day of training from me, and I actually said to her, that she could call me if she had questions after the training, because I assumed that she would, and that she did call me a couple of times. But she did, ultimately she found a place to stay. It was very, very small apartment in downtown Seattle that was like, I don't know, $1,750 a month or something for a studio apartment. And so, that 30-day period where the company could have helped her and helped her be more productive in her job, they traded that productivity by forcing her to do it all on her own. So that's the trade-off. The companies know how much does it cost us to have a support system, human resources, office space, et cetera, versus an unknown cost of lost productivity. And a lot of times they'll choose the latter. They say, well, we know we don't want to spend $1 million a year on this support service. And they're not quantifying a loss of productivity. So therefore they think they're saving money. I would say that they're not, but you would take more, a higher level of effort in order to really determine that. And it's also a function of the scale. How many times a year is someone being transferred into your office in Seattle from another country? Is it once a year, 6 times a year, 20 times a year? So the scale also comes into play.
We interrupt this broadcast to bring you a timely announcement.
Hi, I'm Sergei Gorbatov.
I'm Angela Lane.
Together we're researchers, writers and practitioners in the field of human resources.
And we've also been multi-country, multi-assignment career expats.
We owe our professional development and growth to a very large extent to the international assignment opportunities that we have had.
But in a world where distributed work may become the norm, we also want to understand what will happen to the nature, duration, and purpose of international assignments.
Together with our colleague, Julian Dalzell from the University of South Carolina, we're undertaking a study on the future of expatriation.
And we'd value your contribution. You can participate in this important study by completing a simple 10-minute questionnaire.
Access the questionnaire by typing in your browser tinyurl.com/expert study. That's tinyurl.com/expert study. You can also find the link here on Ed's website next to this video.
Thank you for joining us in this study. In return for your contribution, we'll provide you with a copy of our research.
And of course, you'll be invited to an exclusive webinar hosted by Ed, where we will share our findings right here on Global Business News.
And so please go to tinyurl.com/expat study. Take the survey so that we can better understand the future of expatriation.
Something that's really neat is that the Bridge School partners with various organizations to provide learning for their students. For example, we partner with a major ballet company, and we are able to enroll several of their students into our school. So now not only is the student able to participate in a school and have a seamless transition while they're very active in their ballet career, but now they have other dancers that are with them that are doing some of the same courses. So it's almost becoming a camaraderie where they're taking similar courses, they're working together on their ballet, and really being able to form this great partnership with these organizations to provide a needed service. A lot of times there are student athletes who will spend hours and hours at the gym or at the basketball courts, wherever it is. And if they're attending a traditional school, they're in school from 8 to 3. They get a quick snack, and then they're at the gym for 3 to 4 hours in the evening. coming to us and having that partnership, they're able to break that up throughout the day. They can have a morning practice, get some schooling in, have an afternoon practice, finish their schooling in the evening. So there's that flexibility. And additionally, if there are tournaments or performances, it's fantastic because if there's a week where they have shows straight through, they can take that week off of learning and then pick back up when they're done. So it offers this great flexibility. And for the program owners of these sports leagues, it is a win-win situation for them because they see this need. They see this need that their students need to make sure that they are obtaining the grades necessary to be successful adults in our country and in other countries. But it provides them an environment where they can be successful at both.
So oftentimes this is mitigated because the VPHR or somebody in the C-suite has been relocated with a family, and it can be hell.
Right.
And the people who don't approve the spending of 1% or whatever it is for these services, it's actually stupid. And because it costs the company a lot more, never mind the human wreckage. So Maslow's top level, okay, nirvana. How do you get to nirvana?
Well, the top level of Maslow's hierarchy is self-actualization.
What's that mean in English?
So, that's when you achieve all of your life's goals and you're self-actualizing or expressing all of your individual human potential possible. And so I don't think any of us ever reaches true self-actualization. The second level is ego and esteem needs, which is really your professional, having success professionally and being recognized as someone and being respected, in your chosen field, or just being respected as an individual person in whatever aspect of your life someone might interact with you on.
So we have about, just to let everybody know, we have about 10, 15 minutes remaining here. But I want to cover this and make sure that you feel as if the communication is clear about first of all, what it is, and then the need for it, and then the solution. How does this relate? What's the difference between the Peterson and the Maslow?
Well, I'll say a few words and I'll ask Ali to share because he and I work together with the Peterson Style Indicator. The Peterson Style Indicator is a collection of values, cultural values continuums, where you can compare and contrast the values between two cultures. So, for example, one of it is, are you a relationship culture or task-oriented culture or relationship-oriented culture? And the way that manifests is, and we talked about it, Ollie and I worked in a working situation. So if you have a group of people from different cultures that have the same task as a team, some people who are task-oriented will say, let's get to work and what do we have to do and what are the component parts and we'll parse out the work and this is your job and your job. Okay, everybody, let's go. Someone who's relationship-oriented will say, well, let's all introduce each other and learn more about each other. Where are you from? What are your interests? Let's get together and have a drink after work and talk about our families and really get to know each other. And then at the next meeting, we'll talk about the task. So that's kind of an example of the two ends of that continuum. Now, Americans tend to be very task-oriented, and probably most of the rest of the world tends to be relationship-oriented. And that oftentimes comes into play in multinational companies like Boeing. So Ali, I don't know if you want to add something to that, but Ali and I worked on this with groups at the Boeing company.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's I almost every discussion dialogue that I have with teams, I share the Peterson Style Indicator, and as George mentioned, these are like really good dimensions: relationship, task, individualism versus collectivism, which is more important, the individual or the group. And the nice thing about it is, I mean, you look at it like, I would say maybe like 60, 70, 80 years ago before, and I'm pretty sure there were studies there about cultures, but you say, okay, how am I gonna go and work with various cultures? Should I go talk with somebody from that culture, but I'm gonna go see someone else who's different. How do I know that I understand? So this indicators, it gives you really a good view of how the culture that you're working with, and it tells you where you are. So first, where the culture is, where your culture is, and then what you individually, how much you subscribe to that culture. And then it gives you ways to say, you know what, I come from a collectivistic society where the group is more important. So if I want to go get a job in a company that it's more individualistic influence is much higher, I'm going to try to say less and less we. I don't want to say we on the team, we do this, we, because most probably the manager who's going to hire me is coming from individualistic society, and they use the word I. And if I continue saying we, and they were going to keep on poking with questions saying, well, tell me you specifically what you did. And I don't feel comfortable because the group is more important. I don't want to come across as I am, I did all that work, so I'm shy. I don't want to say these things. So I keep on saying we, and in the end, I don't get the job. So this is just one dimension.
Not a good fit. Huh?
No. And it could work the other way around. If I come from a collectivistic society, I want to hear someone talking about how important they are, and they did this and this. I'm like, you know what? I'm not really sure if I want to bring her, because I'm not sure that she will fit in with the team, because all what I hear is what she's talking about. Both are right. There's no right or wrong. There's right and left.
So one of the values of this model is that you can bring a group of people together. You can explain the model to them. It has 5 different dimensions, and you can ask them to plot themselves on that model. And then after you do that, you share that information within a group, and you see where are we similar and where are we different, and what are the implications of our differences. The other part is that you can always plot an organizational culture on the dimensions as well. So for example, when we were working at the Boeing company, Boeing is an engineering and manufacturing company. It has, more than 100-year history now of being a leader in those areas. So it has a culture that you can plot its values on these dimensions, and there's a style indicator. And then you can say to people, well, how do you stack up against the company's culture? Are there places where you're similar and places that you're different? And if you're different, what are the implications for that? And really, you have at least 2 choices. When you're a little bit different, you can say, well, I'm going to try to adjust to be more like the company culture, because now that I know what the difference is. Or you can say, I'm going to be aware that I'm a little bit different, so I'm going to expect people to perceive my difference, and therefore I need to be ready to explain it to other people and saying, hey, George, you're a manager, but I don't see you leading as an individual that much. And if I'm somebody who's a bit more collectivist in my nature, or community oriented, I would say, I think that's good feedback, because I know that sometimes I'm too group oriented, and now I'm a new manager, and I know I need to step up my individual action a bit more. And it doesn't become an argument, it's a discussion. And the other person can say, hey, well, he heard me, and I have confidence that he's going to make good decisions in the future. And I can say to that, think of that other person. It's like, I'm getting some feedback, and this is what I expected might happen. And so I'm glad to hear it, and I can make some adjustments. So you kind of take the emotion out of the interaction, because you have your own understanding of the company culture and your individual culture. And that's, for me, I always start with the individual as a culture. Every individual has their own culture. Even within America, I line up or don't line up with typical American culture as a person, and that's fine too. And I'm just glad that I, over the years, have kind of learned how to use these models in a variety of ways.
Thank you so much, Doctor. What's this process called, the 7 concepts?
Well, the 7 concepts of cross-cultural interaction is another model that was developed, I think, in the 1980s, when it was trying to explain to people how kind of combined again the cultural shock, cultural adaptation process with working. And to me, working has always been the differentiating activity. If you're a tourist, you can go to another country and you can kind of surf the waves of this, and just experience it because you're just there for yourself. If you're expected to do a job there, then you need to have a different attitude. And this is the 7 concepts. Is the first 3 is talking about the culture shock and initial cultural adaptation. And then they have what's called the bridging concept, which says, okay, if you're going to do a job here, you have to figure out how to adapt yourself to that place. You need to make sure that you're defining what you are doing in your job correctly. And you have to be able to explain yourself to the people in this new place. And then if you can do that, then you move on to the last 3 steps, or kind of, there's like a phase 1, the bridging concept, and phase 2. And phase 2 has 3 steps, and that's working your way into establishing a professional identity, being respected, understanding your role, being able to work with people in a positive way in a cross-cultural environment, and ultimately being an effective, fully functioning member of that place as a person and as a worker, not as opposed to when we're, talking about traveling or being a tourist. That's a totally different dynamic. If you're meant to work, then you need to have a deeper understanding of the process and a deeper understanding of yourself and the needs that you have to address.
So when you were country director of the Peace Corps in Togo, how is it different than today?
Well, that's a very interesting question, because when you're the leader of an organization in a country like Togo, which is a small French-speaking country in West Africa, that has a very hierarchical cultural structure, that has a very collective cultural structure, that has expectations are very specific between leaders and subordinates. Whatever kind of manager you think you are, or whatever kind of leader you think you are, the people that you are managing in that place, they don't care. They will relate to you in the way that they relate to leaders. And you have to understand that, and you can talk with them about it and saying, okay, the Peace Corps culture, let's talk about the Peace Corps organizational culture. You're from Togo, I'm from America, and we work for the Peace Corps in Togo. What does that mean? All of us are going to be making some adjustments to that. We have a schedule. We stick to our schedule. We have programs. We follow our programs. We have a budget. We build it, we follow it, we account for it. Those things are not negotiable. That's the Peace Corps organizational culture. Now, as we interact and communicate with each other, we're going to probably be doing that in a way that's some kind of a hybrid between American culture and Togolese culture. And when you work with Togolese professionals who've worked with Peace Corps and Americans therefore for a long time, they've already started making adjustments to you or to the American culture. But I had been a Peace Corps volunteer in Benin, which is the country next door to Togo, in the 1980s. So I'd already spent 2 years in that culture. So I went back to West Africa in 2004. I brought that previous experience and understanding with me, and I would say an appreciation of the local culture that I had developed previously. So if someone hadn't had that previous experience and they were learning the culture for the first time, they probably would have had a different experience than I did. But I'll give you one quick example of something that I could never adjust to and I could never change. I had a man working in my house as a housekeeper. He came with the house. He'd been working in the house for 5 years. He was a very hard worker, got all of his work done, and he was excellent and dependable. He would very often come to me and ask to borrow money. and he got paid a certain amount per month, and every other month or so he would ask if he could borrow some money. So I said to him, I don't like to lend people money. So I said, all right, I will lend you up to the equivalent of 1 month's salary at any given time. That's my limit. And then when you pay it off, you can come back and ask again at another time. And so we had that agreement. On his side of the equation, he would say to me, if you want me to come in on the weekends, I'll work whenever you want me to. If you want me to work 24 hours a day, I'll do it. I don't care. Whatever you want, I'll do it. That was supposed to be my benefit from him. His benefit for me was that I would lend him money for his kids' school tuition or to buy something. The problem that I had was that I didn't want him to come in and work more. I didn't want him to work 24/7. That wasn't a benefit to me. So in effect, I could never access my side of the benefit because that wasn't important to me. I did respect the fact that in his position, it's very common for people to ask to borrow money from their employers. I managed that by setting limits, and he and I had a very positive working relationship the whole time. But it took me quite a while to realize that the part of the dynamic was that there was a benefit out there that he was offering to me as his boss that I had no interest in accessing. But the fact that he offered it meant that he was delivering it to me. And then the other side of the relationship was that because I'm his boss and I have therefore more money, he can ask to borrow money from me whenever he wants, and it's always going to be up to me as to whether or not I would agree to lend him the money.
So, I don't understand the payback. How would that guy find the money to pay you back and still take care of his needs?
Well, sometimes it would take him quite a while. So, for example, if he needed money, he would need money, in the fall for his kids' tuition. And then it might take him 6 months to pay me back, where he was just, cribbing a little bit each month from the money that I was paying him.
Yeah. This is really interesting cultural thing. Would never even think of all this. Ali, thank you for bringing us together. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to end this in about 5 minutes. So, but I welcome you guys to come back and we could do a deeper dive, particularly with as companies open up and expand after the pandemic. Are they doing things differently? So I want to ask that as we move forward. Ali, are you seeing companies doing things a little differently now as opposed to a year ago?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And a lot of people, they're thinking, we hope we can go back to normal. I hope we don't.
Right. This is better.
Because the normal that we were in was not normal. I mean, there was we go back to the human aspect of things and going back to the culture and understanding cultures and all of that. To me, this is a change in the culture that's taking 2 years with the behavior of how we're doing things. So to me, culture is like the climate. I can't change the climate by doing something, by starting a fire, and all of a sudden all the snow is gonna melt, right? I'm gonna have to live with it. I'm gonna be carrying an umbrella. And then as time goes on, the reason I say it's about climate is because we adapt to the climate that we live in, because we figure out that's the best way to survive, right? We end up behaving, talking, saying, doing things the way that is acceptable by the society. And to George's point, just the cultural shock is sometimes we always think of it, we're going from Seattle to Busan in Korea. But if I go there after 4 years, similar to the situation with my friend who was a field service rep in Germany, he went to Germany, he traveled in Europe for several years, like maybe 12 years. When he came back to Seattle, he went to the bank and he was talking with the teller, and she went and he went and he licked the post stamp, and he put it on the paper, and she looked at him and she said, "Oh, I hope that the same thing that happened to George from Seinfeld, I hope that not the same thing happened to you. And he looked at her and he said, Seinfeld? What are you talking about? So totally different. So in the way back, they'll have to deal with that cultural shock. So absolutely. And I think it's to answer your question is yeah, I see a lot of people are doing things differently, and it's kind of like a hybrid between how we used to do before and what we're doing right now. But like in every tragic thing that happened, there is something that we can walk away, as painful as it is, we'll walk away, we're like, wow, we have a different perspective. And that's what interesting example that George shared, is that perspective of perspectives. For that reason, I love the late Richard Rorty. His philosophy is the perspective of perspectives. And Ed, didn't I tell you this is going to be a great discussion? And George,
yeah, really, it's really lively. We could go on for hours, but we got to close.
Yeah.
George Monagan, thank you very much for
Thank you, Ed.
giving us this engineering approach to cultural stuff. It's very, very, very educational, and all the engineers in our network will love this. Ali, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And please come back.
Thank you. And hopefully at one point we'll have it live, like in a conference in front of people. So hopefully we'll do that. So.
Let's do that. Yeah.
Yes.
Hybrid, because I'm never giving this up. This brings us together. How would George and I ever meet?
Right.
That's right. Thank you so much for the opportunity, Ed.
Thanks, Ed.
Thanks for being on Global TV. I'm in Southern California. You guys are in Seattle, and stay cool.
Will do.
Thanks, Ed. Thanks, George.
Okay, ciao.
Thank you for joining us in the meeting room at Global TV Talk Show.
Have a wonderful day, and stay safe.